Okay, folks, your last topic in social psychology concerns some really positive things. We've spent a lot of time this unit talking about why human beings sometimes fail to be the good people that we know they can be. But this last topic concerns why people might engage in acts of altruism. And altruism is like unselfish concern for the well-being of others. So if someone's engaging in an act of altruism, they might be volunteering to help with a charity event or going out of their way to be nice to somebody, even though they didn't have to. That's altruism. Attraction, of course, is like why people like each other. So why two people might become friends, or of course, attraction can be romantic in nature. So why people might start dating. So if nothing else, viewing these last video notes will help you figure out how to make a friend or how to secure that last minute prom date, which it really, if you haven't done that by now, like that's another obstacle. But some ideas. Okay, so for one, why do we go about helping other people? And look, here we have some friendly-looking National English Honor Society students who are participating in a book drive to help their community. Well, one reason that they might do that, and they do for sure look like they're in a good mood there, is people who are in a happier mood tend to be more likely to engage in altruistic behavior. This was something we encountered back in our motivation and emotion unit, but the feel good, do good phenomenon just refers to the fact that if you are happy or in a positive mood, you're more likely to help somebody else. So if you just received an A on your chemistry test, you're more likely to, hold the door open for someone who needs it. If you had just been complimented on your appearance, you might be more likely to sign up to volunteer for the blood drive, for example. So moods can boost altruism. Another theory, though, that's been used to explain why people will sometimes engage in acts of altruism or helping behavior and why sometimes they don't, concerns weighing costs and benefits. This is something referred to as social exchange theory. The idea that, we look at what we're going to get out of the behavior. So in the case of altruism, it does look like it's unselfish, but maybe we get some sort of sense of accomplishment, or maybe some increased social status for engaging in altruistic behavior. Some people like joining clubs and community service organizations in part because then they can appear in front of their peers like they're a good person. So this theory suggests that you're more likely to get people willing to help out with some charity or just any kind of helping behavior if the cost to them is low. So if you emphasize that it's easy to participate or it doesn't involve a huge investment of their time and money, and that there might be benefits to them. So if it's something that they can maybe brag about to their friends, or so that they can appear very generous in front of other people, or maybe just leads to a good feeling. Maybe you could emphasize to a person that volunteering at the local homeless shelter only takes an hour of your time, and you'll feel really good about helping your community. There you're emphasizing low cost and high benefit. This theory then explains why it's harder to get people to sign on to do things that are much more time consuming or involve a lot of commitment on their part. Because the idea is we're always kind of weighing pros and cons of any particular behavior in an economic kind of way. And so people who are trying to get others to engage in acts of altruism ought to keep that in mind. So there's also a couple social norms that seem to relate to helping behavior and people, and folks will often cite these as reasons for why that they're doing helping behavior. One is something called the Reciprocity Norm. There seems to be this tacit agreement among people that if someone helped us with something, then we maybe owe them for that we ought to return the favor. So if your neighbors just invited you over for a backyard barbecue, you might feel obligated to invite them over to your house the next time that you are hosting a barbecue, so that things seem fair and equal. If the reverse of this works as well, so if someone has hurt you, then we often feel that we should reciprocate that. But in the case of altruism, of course, you want to emphasize maybe helping. So people are more likely to agree to give you a donation if you have already provided them with some sort of free service like a bookmark or a sticker or something like that. They might feel a little obligated to pay you back in some way if you've already given them something. And some charitable organizations use that by mailing people like, I don't know, free mailing address labels or things like that, hoping that you're going to feel some emotional tug based on what they've already given you. The social responsibility norm is a social norm where a lot of us feel obligated to help people who seem helpless, that they cannot help themselves. This explains why we're more likely to help vulnerable creatures like babies or seemingly helpless animals, or folks with disabilities or the elderly who might genuinely appear to be in need of help. So when organizations are trying to harness this and getting people to act, they'll often emphasize the vulnerability or neediness of the people who would receive benefits from your help. I always think of the ASPCA advertisements with the sad Sarah McLachlan music and the very sad looking animals when I think of social responsibility norm, because they're showing us pictures of creatures who really appear to be in need of help, and it becomes very difficult to tell yourself that you shouldn't do something to help those creatures. And some people find it so uncomfortable that they change the channel, actually, but that's a sign that that social responsibility norm is working. So those things might get you to help somebody else, but if you want to take that a step further, how might you get someone to like you, not just help you? And again, this might help with securing the prom date or finding a friend to sit next to you during the lunch hour. So here's a quick bunch of tips from the social psychology research about how you might go about doing that. First up, most of us tend to be drawn to or attracted to people who are very similar to ourselves. So that's true of friend groups. It's also true of dating relationships. And this kind of flies in the face of the common sense mantra that we often get told that like opposites attract. The research actually suggests that is patently false. Like most of us actually tend to enjoy spending time with people who share our views, both on a political and religious level. We end up often dating and marrying people who have a similar educational level and similar types of backgrounds and similar interests. So first thing you want to do if you're trying to get someone to like you is maybe emphasize that you share some common interests, because that is usually the foundation for strong friendships and relationships. Now, this one you may or may not have as much control over, but there are some things you can do to promote it. Turns out proximity is something that affects whether or not someone's going to like you, and that means literally geographic nearness. Like, how close do you live to the person? Do you live in the same community? Do you live in the same neighborhood, even? And you may think, well, isn't that wrong, because can't I just connect with anyone from across the country via the interwebs? Well, yes, but it turns out actual real-time contact with people does matter, and you're more likely to maintain relationships with people that you actually see in face-to-face settings on a regular basis. That's actually why even dating websites like Match.com and I don't know, chemistry, is that a thing still? I don't know. They often try and match people with folks who live near them, because there is this phenomenon called the mere exposure effect. The more that you are exposed to some novel or new stimulus, that's what novel means in this context, the more you are going to like that thing. So you're more likely to develop a relationship that is characterized by positive feelings, so like friendship or dating relationship, with someone that you see every day as compared to someone that you only see once in a while. This actually refers not just to people, although people are part of it. It can be anything, like a song that you hear more often. Like the more often you hear it, the more likely you are to like it. Most of my students actually prefer to sit in the same place in the classroom, even if there hasn't been a seating chart assigned, just because they come to like the place that's familiar to them. So mirror exposure effect is pretty powerful. So if you want maybe that person to agree to go on a date with you or go to prom with you, maybe you should be around them a bunch. That's seems manageable, but not in a creepy way, please. Okay, so our last factor, this will take no one by surprise. Sadly, all of your worst fears about the powerfulness of physical attractiveness in shaping friendships and dating relationships is probably verified by this social psych research. People who are deemed by others to be more physically attractive tend to be more likely to be asked out on dates. They actually tend to have higher incomes, kind of regardless of their level of skill, and they tend to be seen as more popular and have more friends. They're just going to get more invites. And weirdly, our views of people who are attractive, like they get this weird halo effect where we assume their physical attractiveness is also a marker of other good things. Like we assume very attractive people are also more intelligent and more skilled and nicer than people who are less attractive. And all that stuff is like wrong, but it still filters into like people being sought out more. So those perceptions that people who are more attractive have other like good qualities about them may actually build into self-fulfilling prophecies. So if you think that this attractive person that you're talking to is a more nice person, you're going to treat them in a kinder way than you would someone who you perceived or believed to be not nice, and that may actually evoke more positive responses from them, leading to a confirmation of your initial beliefs. Okay, we may not have a whole lot of control over our own physical attractiveness. I mean, we've all been dealt a different hand when it comes to that, but it does mean emphasize what you got. So if you are going to invite someone to prom at the last minute, maybe make sure you're dressed up and you combed your hair to look as nice as you can, and you're wearing like decent clothing that emphasizes the positive qualities about you, because those things might help. So I hope as we conclude this unit on social psych, maybe you've picked up from this presentation some things that you could do to make sure that the people in your environment are more helpful as opposed to less, and maybe even how to make a friend. Enjoy.